Hey YouTube, I wanted to talk to you guys a bit today about highly sensitive people and relationships. Um, this is a really challenging area for all human beings, or I should say most human beings, but for highly sensitive people, it tends to be an even more challenging area because we struggle with our own feelings and thoughts and the intensity to which we feel them. So then add somebody else into the equation and just think about how intense that can be. And we're constantly picking up on people's energies and we're very observant. So we're very in tune with what our partner's experiencing. And this can lead to a whole plethora of issues. It can also lead to a plethora of beautiful things. So I want to unpack this stuff with you guys today and gather a little bit more understanding and insight around what it means to be a highly sensitive person in relationship. So I'm going to start out by just disclosing that I am feeling very off. I'm practicing a new skill, which is to put out content even when I'm feeling like shit, because I can't always be at my best. And this is an important part of my healing and my processes, is to allow myself to be seen in states that I consider to be undesirable. And so anyways, I've been kind of struggling for the last month. And I've been struggling in relationship and in relating. And it's causing a lot of anxiety. My ego's become very activated. There's a lot of stuff coming up for me, and I thought it would. There's no beautiful more way to share this than to share it with people who are following my journey and people who are inspired by the content that I put out, because I know that you're also like me and you probably struggle with similar things as I do if you're following my content. So, anyways, I wanted to just to talk about that, and that's alive for me even right now in this moment. And I will be bleeding in some of my struggles over the course of the last month or two and how that plays out in my relationships. So I want to start out just by sharing a bit of a story. So I moved from Calgary out to Vancouver, and I had an intention of coming out here because for most of my life I've always wanted to just date one person, and I've always kind of had this love fantasy of how love needs to be, and I've held on to that with dear life. And I came out here with the intention to let go of that and to date multiple people, potentially look at doing some sort of polyamory situation and see what that would mean to me. I started reading the book called The Ethical Slut. Everything was going really well. I was, the first few months of dating multiple people is actually quite enjoyable and quite easy because it's light and fluffy, and no one's putting a lot of expectation on you to show up in any way because things are light. Everybody's just kind of taking it easy at first. But then what ended up happening around like the 2-3 month mark is people started to like have more feelings. They wanted to spend more time with me. A lot of insecurity started coming up, both in myself and others, and it started to become a lot. And it started to take a lot of my bandwidth that I don't have. I'm a very busy person. My work is at the top of my priority lists, and I started to feel like I was burning the candle at both ends. And for some people, this is an effective model of relating, and I think that's wonderful. But what I learned for myself is that dating multiple people actually drained me, and it allowed me to go far and wide, but not deep and intimate, which is what I yearn for as a highly sensitive person. So it was a valuable lesson for me in really making sure that I am honoring myself, and my body was telling me that it's important to just focus on one person. So anyways, this is where this all kind of transpired, and it moved me into entering a relationship. It came down to two guys that I was having feelings for, and I ended up choosing to go with the one that made my heart feel like it just was singing, right? I felt really good being with this guy, and we decided to start a relationship. And one thing that I noticed about myself when that happened was a lot of anxiety started to come up because all of my eggs were now put in this one basket. This one person had a lot of control over how I felt because I was putting all my eggs in this one relationship as opposed to spreading them out. And so I started working through a lot of this anxiety, and what I noticed was it was an anxious attachment style that had been unresolved still. I've been working on this for almost a decade now. Since it first came forth that I have some codependent patterning, and I've got some anxious attachment traits in my attachment wounding, in my relational wounding, and I started to work on this again. And this time I've been able to work on it in the container of the relationship, because we both are able to be conscious and have this type of relating, and it's been so effective. So I wanted to speak to that, because it's important kind of to set the tone for where I'm going to take this video, and share with you guys just some of the intricacies that I've experienced in my relationship. So that's where I'm at now, presently. I want to maybe rewind back a little bit and talk a bit about some of my insecurities, being a highly sensitive person, and how that has impacted how I choose to relate, or maybe some of my fears when it comes to relating or dating. A lot of my audience are gay males, but I also have a large following of females as well. So I don't want to make this video just about gay men, but in the gay culture, it's very acceptable to drink on the weekends, even in your 30s and 40s and 50s, to party, to have lots of sex. Like, all these things are very, very alive in the gay community. And I started to really embrace my sensitivity and turn off my callousness, my avoidance of my sensitivity, because all that is just denial of your sensitive nature, and then it ends up affecting you in other ways in your life, and you develop like health issues, whatever. But I started to really bring a lot of acceptance to my sensitive nature in doing this work. And I realized that, holy crap, there's a lot of limitations in who I can date and how I can show up in the dating world, because of multiple reasons. I pretty much can't drink alcohol. I can't eat sugar. I've listed all of these things in my sensitive story. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out. It's just called My Sensitivity Story. And I can't do random sex. I have a hard time dating somebody who requires a lot of space. I like a lot of closeness in my relationship. So there's a lot of different things that started to play out, and I started to really get down on myself, and I was like, man, I'm never going to find somebody that has these same qualities as me, that is very ambitious, wants to work, spend a lot of time working, because I really enjoy my work, and it's like, basically it's my playground. I get to do what I love. And I wanted to meet somebody who also was settled down. They didn't want to party on the weekends. I kind of live a bit like a grandpa. I spend a lot of my time just being grandpa, and meditating and going for walks and hiking, and I go to bed early, and I tend to wake up fairly early. So I have a very structured life, and it works really well for me, because I know what I need to do in order to be a thriving, highly sensitive person. But for the longest time, I carried a lot of shame around these limitations that I have in a relationship, and I viewed my sensitivities when it comes to relating as a bad thing, as a negative thing. And I want to tell you, if you're highly sensitive and you're watching this, that it's okay to start to restructure those things. It's okay to start to create a different relationship with your sensitivities, so you can start to lead with the things that make you you, and own them. It's really beautiful when you start to notice that all of these things that you're doing are the parameters that you've identified in yourself from years and years of trial and error, and you finally found the recipe that works. So why are we shaming ourselves for finding the recipe that works for us, right? So what I noticed was these sorts of, this shaming was me moving into this area where there was some unhealed codependency. So I've told myself the story from being highly sensitive that I am different and I'm not good enough, and I carry that into relationships. So what I want to try and do is I want to try and keep my partner close and make sure that they don't live a life too different than mine, because I feel like that creates separation. And then when there's separation, my codependency gets anxious and it wants more closeness. And so I play out this dynamic. And what I've realized is that it's okay for me to be me and my partner to be them. But it's also okay for me to want to attract a partner who wants the same things as me. And in my current attraction model with partners, I was attracting people who didn't have the same lifestyle values as me. So that means that they did drugs, they drank, they maybe even did steroids, they like these sorts of things, and those don't fit with my lifestyle values. And that's not a judgment to them. That's just a knowing and a boundary that I have for myself of what's going to work. And as I started to own these sensitive parts of myself, I started to stand in a power, like a worthiness of, I deserve to be with somebody that matches me, that matches my sensitive nature. So I ended up creating a list, and I just called it like my soulmate list, or what I'm looking for in a soulmate. And yes, I do believe in soulmates. I believe in multiple soulmates as well. I don't believe that we are going to spend our life with that one magical person and it's going to be a fairy tale. I think we have different type of people that can be different soulmates, and some people will meet one soulmate and be with them forever in that lifetime, and some people will have 3 or 4 soulmates in their life, but I do believe in soulmates. And so I created that list, and then I ended up creating another list, which was, what value do I bring to this soulmate relationship? So I had 2 lists, and no shit, within 2 weeks of me creating these lists, I ended up attracting a guy into my life, and we related for 4 months before meeting in person, and it's now the guy that I'm in a relationship with. And he's also a highly sensitive person, he's also intuitive, he's doing the consciousness work, he's spiritual, he's also studied shamanism, he's basically my twin. So, and when you attract somebody that's so like-minded as you too, there's also a lot of triggering that can happen, because we're reflecting to each other our beauty, but we're also reflecting to each other our shadows and our sore spots and our blind spots. So it's been such a beautiful relationship, full of awakening and full of insight and full of also activation for me to look at myself and say, what do I need to heal within myself? And that's where some of this codependency stuff comes in, because I was noticing in myself that there's this pattern of codependency that I was playing out, which was basically, I spent most of my life in this energy, being highly sensitive, being empathic, and being intuitive. And even as a little boy, I remember my feelings were very intense. My thoughts were very intense. I was a deep thinker even as a child, and it was kind of a fearful place to live, actually, in this real intense. Everything is intense. My skin feels thin. Like, everybody can see me. I feel exposed. That was the energy that I grew up in as a child. And what my experience with my very first intimate relationships, which would be with my caregivers, my mom and my dad, were that I didn't feel understood. I didn't feel like my parents got me, because I was highly emotional and I was highly sensitive, and I didn't feel like I had the structure in my development to be able to accommodate my sensitive nature. And this is at no fault of my parents at all, because they didn't know, right? And how do you know? So for me, it was just, that was my experience. And it took me a long time to get to a place where I accepted that, because I did hold a lot of resentment towards my parents for that for a long time. But I've since made peace with that. And so my predominant experience as a child when it comes to my emotions was that my emotions weren't ever validated. I felt kind of emotionally neglected as a kid, and I felt alone and scared. And so that's the core wounding, or the core root to my codependency. And this is common for a lot of highly sensitive people, because it's really hard to meet the needs of a highly sensitive person as a child when we don't even know what our needs are, and our parents don't know what our needs are, so our needs go unmet. And then we carry these into our adult relationships, and we end up struggling in intimate relationships because we have codependent patterning in our relational DNA. And the codependent patterning can show up in 2 ways. So we have the victim and we have the saver. And you can be both, right? But what ends up happening, and what I've identified in myself, is there's this part of me that when I don't feel like I'm getting my needs met, what I do is I create this victim energy, and I create problems in my relationship. I start to focus on things and create an issue to be fixed, because I'm trying to play out what happened to me as a child, but with a new outcome, where my saver will come in and save me, because my experience when I was younger was that I wasn't being saved. So what I've done is I've done this a lot in my past relationships, and holy shit, I had this realization within the last few weeks here, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe it took me this long, this many failed relationships to figure this out about myself. So what that's meant for me is it's meant that I've had to start taking responsibility for my own feelings and my own triggers and my own ego, and not putting it onto somebody else to come and save me. Because what I have now is the skill set and the ability to be able to save myself. As a child, I didn't have that. So what my core experience is of myself is that I need somebody else to come in and take care of me. And it's so interesting that I've gone into a profession where I take care of others, because that's the saver dynamic. But my victim dynamic is being played out in this make other people responsible for my feelings. So it's really important for me to start to take that responsibility for myself. That looks like me, instead of blaming others, it looks like me sitting on my couch the other night and being with my feelings, and being with the fear, being with the worry, the anxiety, and holding myself through it, and being the higher consciousness that I am, and observing this wounded, scared little child inside of me that's looking for somebody to be there to support them. Okay, it's a very fine line between reaching out to my partner and reaching out for my own needs to be met by myself. Because when we're in a relational dynamic, it's okay to look to your partner for support. But when we're looking for support from our partner in absence of support from ourselves, that's when it becomes imbalanced. So we want to be able to be there for ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to our emotions, and allow our partner to be with us in our emotions. Not make them become our emotions, or not make them take responsibility for our emotions. They can sit with us in our emotions, and they can hold us while we grieve. That's the work that I'm doing, and that's the intensity of what's happening in my experience right now, where I'm feeling a lot. I'm relearning how to parent my child, my inner child, in this really deep and profound way, and it's been really, really intense, but beautiful, because I'm powerful. And I'm learning how to set boundaries, which make me even more powerful, which I'm going to go into a little bit more about that. But so you have the codependency dynamic of the victim. So I've already talked about that. The saver. Okay, so this looks like people who like to fix others, because when they fix others, there's two streams to this. When you fix others, you get to focus on others' problems, and your problems never get talked about or looked at, which is a safe place for people to be who don't want to show up vulnerably. And then the other side is that they get the validation, they get the admiration, they get the appreciation and the love by being the saver. So I've played out both in relationships, and I also have brought my codependent patterning into my coaching at times as well. And I have to really check that, because I'm like, okay, wait, am I trying to save them? Am I bringing this in for what reason? Okay, so those are the two dynamics that are quite alive in the codependent patterning that shows up for highly sensitive people. And it's important to be able to identify yourself and be able to take accountability. So when you look at the victim, they need to take accountability by owning that, yes, I'm in a victim state right now, my ego is activated, and I'm trying to manipulate the situation so you meet my needs for me and rescue me out of my pain. Okay, so accountability, important. And then when you look at people who are saving, those people need to really learn how to allow people to have their emotional process without interfering with it. Because as highly sensitive people, and when we're savers, we're actually misusing or abusing our empathy by sitting in another person's experience with them and going, this feels really uncomfortable, so I'm going to rescue you out of it because I don't want to feel it myself. Okay, that's when it becomes problematic, because we are taking people out of their process because of our own discomfort with their process, because we're enmeshed with our process being their process. So both of them come to accountability. We need to take accountability, and we need to really own the feelings that are coming up and allow ourselves and the other person to feel their own feelings as an individual without it becoming enmeshed. Once we learn to do that, our relationships become a lot more secure, they become a lot less codependent, and we learn how to hold space, and we learn how to be authentic. Because when we're feeling our feelings and we're giving each other space to feel our feelings, that is the birthplace of authenticity, right? Feeling your feelings as they are and as they show up is authenticity. Okay, that's the beautiful part of this work. And that's why I love doing authenticity work, because I get to show up as I am. It's amazing. It's something that I cherish and I value. One other point I want to make is about boundaries. Okay, so boundaries are critical. That's how we move through codependency, and we heal our codependency, because boundaries is about taking accountability for yourself, letting other people take accountability for themselves, and that's where we give the space for that to occur. So I like to think of boundaries as like walls that we put around ourselves, but the walls have a door built into it. And we're actually teaching people how to access that door. We're saying, hey, this is what I need. I need to make sure that you're showing up in this way so I can feel safe in our relationship. That's a personal boundary. There's also relational boundaries. Like, I need to make sure that I have some time to be with myself this week. So can we hang out on these 2 nights, and then the rest of the nights I want to spend some time with myself. So we're creating space, we're playing with space in the relationship in order to make sure that we are taken care of, right? Because boundaries are there to make sure we're taken care of, and that we have a self-care practice that we can uphold that allows us to remain autonomous and interdependent and independent on ourselves. And so this is essential. The more we set boundaries, the more we're actually teaching people how to treat us, and we're teaching people how to meet our needs. Okay, but where people falter when it comes to boundaries is a couple areas, and one of them is that they are not quite sure what their needs are. Right? As highly sensitive people, if we've been doing the whole codependent thing for so long, everybody else's needs have been more important than our needs. So when somebody says, "What do you need?" I'm just like, whoa, what do I need? I'm confused. And it was pointed out to me the other night by my partner that I say, I don't know a lot before I start talking. And I was like, whoa, I actually do say that a lot. And I think it's like, there's this part of me that like, there's this uncertainty in me that it's like, I don't want to own too much of what I want, because what if that's not what I want? Or what if that pushes them away? Or what if, so that old kind of people pleasing stuff comes out in me when it comes to boundaries. My people pleasing tells me, no, don't tell them exactly what you want, because what if they don't like that? What if there's all that ego-y stuff that comes up and all the fear that comes up. So we need to really get clear on what our needs are, and how we can do that is we can start to just, first off, by writing down like a list of things that we value. Like, what do you value in others? What do you value in yourself? Like, what do you bring to the table? And that'll help if you create the list around like soulmate, and then what do you want? That'll really paint you the picture of what you need in order to feel good. And then start to like work through that. Like, okay, my values are that I really value a lot of physical space. I really value a lot of physical closeness, whatever that might be for you. If you know that, if you've identified that as something that makes you feel good, then start to create a list in your phone or whatever of things that, okay, this is what I need to feel good. And then you start to look at, okay, how can I advocate for this? How can I let my partner know that I require space? And then that's when we share through communicating that, okay, this is the boundaries. These are the boundaries that I have. These are the things that I need met in order for me to feel good. Again, another roadblock that we come up to as highly sensitive people usually is around self-worth. We struggle with shame around being highly sensitive, so we have lower self-worth typically, and we struggle with communicating our needs because we don't feel worthy to have our needs met. And that's where we have to really, really challenge some of our conditioning, right? What does it mean to be sensitive? Your sensitivity is a beautiful thing, right? You've just been conditioned to look at it as if it's not, right? So maybe your starting point in this work is going to be to write down a list of things of why you value being sensitive, right? Everything has polarities, right? Even if we experience too much joy, there's a polarity to that, right? It becomes not too much joy anymore. It just becomes your natural state. So everything is always balancing itself out in the universe. And whenever we have a lot of negative things that come with being sensitive, there's going to be things that come with that are positive as well, and we need to learn how to reframe those. And I've got some other videos that talk a bit about sensitivity and some of the benefits of being sensitive, so I would encourage you to check out those on my page if you haven't yet already. So identifying the needs is going to be really, really key for boundary setting. And then what you need to do is you need to sit down with your partner and you need to actually have a conscious conversation about, okay, these are my needs. This is what I need in order to be happy. And then they give them the same space to be able to communicate to you. And it's almost like, where it can become problematic for people is when they start to compromise their boundaries and they say, okay, well, I'm willing to give up this. If you're willing to give up this, that doesn't work, because you're dishonoring yourself. And how you'll know you're dishonoring yourself is your body's going to communicate to you. So you'll notice in all my videos, one of the biggest solutions I always pose to people is get connected to your body. Spend time with your nervous system. Ask your body what it needs, because your body's never going to lie to you. Your mind will tell the sensitivity story of, I'm not good enough, I'm sensitive, I'm this, I'm that, so I'm willing to compromise because I'm too needy, right? I'm too emotional. That's what the conditioned sensitivity story tells you. That, okay, I got to sacrifice some of my needs because I'm too needy, because I've been told I'm too needy, because I'm emotional. That's other people's shit, okay? That's the conditioning that they project onto us, because they think that being sensitive is a bad thing, because they have to deal with emotions in us, because they're not dealing with the emotions in themselves. So as we start to learn to deal with our own emotions, we start to develop tolerance to other people's emotions as well. And that's just a projection onto us from people that are emotionally intolerant, that they see us as highly emotional because they're not processing their own stuff. So don't take that on. So anyways, that's the whole point I wanted to make, is it's really important to sit down and not compromise your boundaries. Say, these are my boundaries, and be willing to walk away, and be willing to allow someone to walk away from you if they're not willing to respect your boundaries, because these are the things that are going to protect you. These are the things that are going to make you feel safe. These are the things that are going to recharge your battery. These are the things that are going to make you feel less anxious as a highly sensitive person. This is everything. Okay, boundaries is everything in this work. So you don't want to get into habits of compromising your boundary, because you're compromising your sense of self. And your sense of self is the most important thing. Without a strong sense of self, you cannot have a strong relationship. That's what we really need to be focused on here. So that's the main point. I wanted to end off this video by sharing a little tip, and it's been really effective for me. So I get up every morning and I do some embodied movement. So embodied movement for me is basically like one-pointed concentration. So for people who have watched my videos, one-pointed concentration is where you're focusing on one thing and one thing only, and when your mind wanders, you bring it back to the activity at hand. In this case, it's going to be dancing. Your embodied movement is fluid movement. Put on some nice music. It can be slow, it can be fast, whatever, but you're in your body. Your mind is not taking over. You're just literally following every single movement in your body, and you're being with that experience. Okay? That's the first step. And then the second step for me in learning how to be with self, and learning how to love self, because what I noticed I was doing with my codependency is I was loving excessively my partner, and really like holding him and giving him all this love. And I had this really profound experience about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we were sitting on the couch and we were kind of making out and we were kissing, and I was like adoring him, and I was, loving him up. And I had this moment in myself where I had this voice came out, and it was like, well, what about me? And I kind of paused and I was like, whoa, that was interesting. And I communicated that to my partner, like, I'm feeling like I need to actually tend to myself right now, because my body is feeling like it needs love from me. And I think that's such a profound experience for me to have. But it's also like, for a lot of people, that could be a really like weird thing to do. Like, oh, I need to love my body. So what I've been doing is I've actually been I created a rule in my relationship, and this is just for myself, but I'm going to love myself the same amount that I'm loving my partner. And I'm a very physically affectionate person, and I give a lot of words of affirmation, and I like giving gifts and things like that. So what I do is, in the morning when I'm doing some of my dance, I'm literally holding myself and I'm touching myself in the same ways that I hold my partner. And I'm learning how to cradle myself and learning how to hold myself with this like nurturance and this deep love for myself. And it's been so powerful. I've had moments in the morning where I'm dancing and I'm holding myself and I start crying. And I'm literally holding myself as I cry. Like, if you've never had that experience, it's so magical, because you're healing your own inner child and you're allowing your child to feel safe in your presence, right? Relationships become a lot less scary when you know you have yourself to relate with if your relationship dissolves, right? That's the power of this work. So my partner knows this. He knows that I'm loving myself just as much as I'm loving him. And you know what? That makes me a deeper lover, makes me a more comprehensive lover, to be able to love myself, because when I feel loved, I feel like I can give 10 times more love. And I don't want my love for self to be reliant on somebody else reflecting it back to me. So anyways, I felt inclined to share that because it's really neat. And how you can do this is if you are in a partnership and you notice, okay, what do I keep doing to my partner? You know, I do this thing with my partner where I kind of rub under his eye and I just gaze into his eyes and I like touch himself really, or touch him really gently, and I just love, you know, and caress. And so I noticed that, okay, like if I'm offering this type of love, I'm really attentive to the type of love that I'm giving. I mean, does that maybe mean that that's what I want for myself? Right? And I started to look at that, and there's two things that came out of that. I started to love myself in these ways. I started to kind of just touch myself in these really gentle and nurturing ways, and it's been very powerful. But it also got me reflecting on, does he want that? Does he want the type of love that I think that he wants based off of me projecting what I think he wants because that's what I want? And it took me a moment to be like, okay, well, why don't you ask him? How does he want to be loved? How does he want to be touched? And when you do that, that's when you really start stepping into being a really amazing lover, because you're leading with curiosity and you're asking your partner, well, what do you need? What do you need to feel good? What do you need to feel loved? And he's also an HSP, which is really beautiful because we tend to have a very similar love language, and we can eat that up, right? We eat up each other's love, and it's really beautiful. So anyway, a really cool tip that's really, really helpful for me right now. So I wanted to share that with you guys. I feel like I've been talking so fast. My nervous system is like super activated lately, and I'm like talking fast, I'm thinking fast, I'm moving fast, and I just need to chill. Take a big breath. But yeah, anyway, thanks for tuning in, as always, and please drop me some comments and let me know what's going on in your world, in your relating game. Drop me some information about your relating game. I'd love to hear about people's relating game. What's a struggle that you have in your relating right now? And what's something that's going really well in your relating game right now? It could be with friends, it could be with dates. It doesn't really matter. Relating is relating. I would just love to know, as an HSP, what are your hang-ups with relating, and what are your strengths with relating? Get you thinking. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Have a beautiful day. Ciao.